Hi, everyone. Welcome and officially good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is you are that you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for joining us virtually today. My name is Hayla Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's reading of new fiction. We'll be hearing from Nikki A. Lamers reading from Breaking Cycles, released October 10th, Linda Fifer reading from Finding the Grain, releasing January 18th, and Melissa Clark Bacon reading from Through Her Lens, released April 2nd. All three authors' books can be purchased both from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, you can order the books online at Atmosphere Press's website just by going to atmospherepress.com/books. I'm also going to put some links in the chat for you as well. At the end of today's event, we are going to have time for your questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or more of our authors, type it in the chat and I will make sure it gets asked. During the reading itself, please stay muted to keep extraneous sound at a minimum, and definitely feel free to use the chat for any praise and comments you want to share in the meantime. And one last note is that we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we would love to read it, so submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Nikki, Linda, and Melissa today. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Nikki. Award-winning author Nikki A. Lamers has always had a passion for reading and writing, especially romance. She grew up in Wisconsin with her sister, mom, and dad, and she always loved reading romance books and watching romance movies with her dad, something they both enjoyed. After college, she lived in Florida for a few years working for the happiest place on earth, where she met her husband. She now lives on Long Island in New York with her husband and two kids. She spends her free time reading or hanging out with friends and family, and she would love to spend more time traveling, visiting new places, and meeting new people, as well as continue to create stories, each of her characters becoming part of her family. Today, we'll be hearing Nikki read from Breaking Cycles. Over a decade ago, motorcycle mechanic Grant Young made a daring escape, fully convinced he'd never look back. A shadowed history propelled him into the abyss, ensuring he mastered the art of detachment. However, destiny takes an unforeseen turn when Ella, a stunning, intelligent, and courageous woman, steps in to rescue him from the aftermath of a catastrophic accident. We'll hear the story unfold now from Nikki.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm going to start right at the beginning. Grant. Moonlight shines in through the cracked blinds, keeping me awake. I had been hoping to get a few hours of sleep, but tonight it appears an impossible feat. Turning my head to the side, I glance at the raven-haired beauty lying next to me, her tan skin peeking out from underneath the sheet. I take a moment, watching her chest rise and fall, making sure she's sleeping before quietly slipping out of bed, resigned. Reaching for my backpack, I pull out clean box of briefs, slipping them on before stepping into my faded blue jeans. As I pull a white t-shirt over my head, my thoughts drift to the open road, my fingers already twitching with anticipation. I tug my shoes on, knowing it's time for me to go. Where? I'm not quite sure. Taking one last glance at the beauty lying in bed, I sigh as I pull my black leather jacket on before I grab my black helmet off the table. Turning, I slip out the door, quietly closing it behind me. Striding over to my motorcycle, I throw my leg over, revving the engine. I pull out, heading northeast out of Alabama, knowing in my head I'm already gone. Soon, my body begins to relax as I cross the border into Georgia. Boundless roads appear in front of me as I cruise past endless seas of green. I don't exactly know where I'm going, but when someone tries to push too far into my life, I can't stay, and she started digging. That was her mistake. Something inside me tensed, urging me to leave, to run, to escape. Honestly, I don't know how to do anything else anymore. She can't help me. No one can. It's been a long time since I've been close to anyone. I almost don't remember what it's like. I huff a humorous laugh, knowing it's been years since I've allowed anyone in. I can't. Even my family doesn't know where to find me. My chest tightens as my thoughts drift to my parents and my little brother, Matt. I'm sure he's not so little anymore. It's been over 10 years since I talked to any of them. I can't help but wonder what they're doing now and what they think happened to me. I grind my teeth at the thought. The truth is, I don't know what I'd do if they found me. Leaving is inevitable. It's my reality. I no longer have a place I can call home. Admitting where I'm from is nearly impossible. I'll never look back at her or any of these places I've been or people who have crossed my path with any regret. She doesn't know me and I don't know her, and I intend to keep it that way. I'm certain where to draw the line. I'm better off alone. Wherever I stop next, I need to remain in control of my situation when it comes to women. I'm always careful about the women I spend my time with. At 29, she's never someone older than me, and she's sure not underage. She can never be the sweet girl next door, the one looking for something serious, nor someone who wants a husband and kids someday. She's never someone I work for, nor someone who asks a lot of questions I won't answer. I'm not a challenge or a game to be won for anyone. It doesn't matter who she is, I will disappear if she pushes me. She needs to know up front it will never be more for me. It can't. I've learned never to depend on anyone, and I won't allow anyone to depend on me. I can't be that man. Anyone who has ever relied on me has only ended up disappointed. As I cross the border into South Carolina, continuing northeast with palm trees interspersed among the trees lining the highway, my thoughts drift to the garage. Sighing, I exit to refill my tank at a 24-hour gas station. Pulling my phone out of my backpack, I tap my boss's number. Hey man, it's Grant. I'm sorry to do this to you at the last minute, but I have to leave town. Thank you for everything. I disconnect, not wanting to explain. I'm going to miss working at that place. I pull out of the gas station, my thoughts on what I might do for work now. I'm grateful to usually find something at a local garage with my experience, knowing it's a place where I don't have to do anything but my job. Besides, I love getting lost in my work, and working on bikes is my specialty. It's the one thing in life I still have that hasn't been tarnished. And without it, I honestly don't know if I would survive. Why some claim it's an empty existence, I'll never know. When I'm working on or riding a bike, it's the one time I can truly relax and be myself. In those moments, I'm free of all the ties threatening to tear me down. I'm free to be me without judgment or consequence, whoever that might be. I don't even know anymore. As I ride my motorcycle, watching the bright orange and yellow surface as the sun rises over the horizon, I'm calmed by the break in the mundane landscape, as the deep blue of the ocean, the bright white of the waves cresting, and the pale brown sand on the beach slides into view. Taking a deep breath as the wind whips against my face, I veer north for the first time in years. Summer is just beginning after all. I could use some time near the beach. Maybe I'll find a coastal town to settle in for a while this time, but I need to be far enough away from the town I vacated in Alabama first. About mid-morning, I cross the border into North Carolina as dark clouds swiftly consume the sky. Up and begins to fall, pelting my ride. I should have checked the weather before I left last night, which reminds me, I have to pick up a new phone. I'm grateful for my jeans and jacket, but it won't do me much good if this weather picks up. It's not long before the roads become slick, the rain cascades harder and steadier, and the wind gusts throw me off balance, nearly knocking me over. I need to find a place to wait out the storm and fast. My vision starts to diminish just as I see an exit up ahead, the sight nearly causing me to sigh in relief. Slowing, I lean into the turn just as a huge gust of wind hits me from the other side. I struggle to regain my balance, and the wind whips again, pushing me past the point of no return. My breath catches in my throat and my heart stops, panic setting in. Desperately, I battle to streamline my bike, knowing I won't be able to compensate. Time slows as I prepare for the inevitable. Hands clenching, I hold my breath, bracing for impact. The moment the first part of me collides with the ground, the air rushes from my lungs. A deafening bang followed by a high-pitched screeching rings in my ears. My right leg hits first, my bike crushing it, followed by my side and shoulder. Finally, my head bounces like a rag doll, my helmet cracking against the pavement on impact. As my bike begins skidding across the road, dragging my body along for the ride, my mind races, attempting to catch up with reality. My bike skitters away from me as my body slows, finally coming to a stop, defenseless. My eyes widen, barely aware of my surroundings as I struggle to breathe. I feel myself losing consciousness. A piercing scream fills the air just before a dark blonde angel drops to her knees at my side. Oh my God, are you all okay? Of course you're not okay, but can you hear me? A sweet, soft voice asks, her slight southern accent laced with anxiety. Her shaky hands slip along my neck. I grunt in response, not able to make another sound, as my breath finally comes back to me. I focus on breathing in and out, my lungs burning with the effort. Thank God you're breathing, she states the obvious. Hi, I need help. There was an accident, a motorcycle. He's breathing, but he doesn't look good. Her statement causes pain to slam into me like a truck. My eyes squeeze shut and I can't stop the explicit scream coming out of my mouth. Can you tell me what hurts? Rain continues pouring down on us like jagged icicles against my skin, causing more agony. Instead of answering, I scream again. She continues talking, but I can't make out what she's saying, too consumed with pain, but not able to pinpoint any of it. Everything hurts. Soft, slick skin of one hand delicately skims my stubbled cheek as another covers my left hand, the touch pulling me out of my excruciating haze. Wait, when did my helmet come off? Licking my lips, the coppery taste of blood hits my tongue. Helmet? I grunt, barely able to force the single word through my lips. You're lucky it didn't come off until the last bounce. I can't believe you're alive, let alone conscious right now. She mumbles under her breath, the words barely audible over the whistling wind. Neither can I. Prying my eyes open, I will myself to look at the woman by my side. I stare into her deep blue eyes, the only thing that seems to be grounding me at the moment, trying to see through my pain. She has a heart-shaped face with a sweet button nose. Her cheeks appear rosy against her pale skin. Beautiful, I murmur. Her eyes widen and her cheeks turn a darker shade of pink. Can I do anything to help you while we wait for the ambulance? I try to shake my head, but moan in agony from the simple movement, my eyes reflexively closing. Can't. Just don't move. I'll try to keep the rain off of you as much as I can. My eyes flutter open, squinting through the rain, starting to come at us sideways, and seeing a blurry pale yellow v-neck shirt completely soaked through, clinging to her body. Attempting to lift my hand towards the perfect image in front of me, I groan in agony as if I'm being stabbed to death this very moment. Everything around me starts to feel like a dream except for my immense pain. There's no way she can be real. Help me, I plead, asking her the one thing I haven't asked for from anyone in what feels like forever. But if she's not real, maybe she can give me a momentary reprieve before I die. Maybe that's why she's here, an angel to end my eternal pain. The high-pitched wail of a siren sounds in the distance, as if giving me permission to stop fighting. I honestly don't know if I care if the EMTs make it in time. It doesn't matter. I won't be missed. Will they tell my family? Will they care? My eyes slam closed. An image of my little brother Matt, the way I remember him, flashes in my mind. He's crouching next to me and pretending to work on my bike as he smiles adoringly up at me. A look I don't deserve. He's better off without me. My angel's sweet voice attempts to comfort me, but I'm not able to take any more. Giving in to the pain, I finally let go, drifting into a dark, blissful abyss. Ella. Leaning forward, I glance outside my living room window at the storm and grimace. It looks like the rain is starting to pick up. Reaching for television and flip to the local weather station, hoping to get an update when suddenly everything goes dark, making me groan in frustration. Losing my electricity is the last thing I need. At least it's daytime, so I'm able to see, even with the storm clouds darkening the sky. Setting the remote down, I reach for my phone. It rings just as I unlock it. My oldest brother's face lighting up the screen. Sighing, I answer. Declan, what a surprise. Hey, little sis, I just saw the power went out all along the beach. How do y'all already know? It just went out. I look around as if he's standing somewhere in the room. I know things, he teases, chuckling softly. Actually, I was on the phone with a lifeguard station near you when it went out. I'm not sure how long it will be out with the storm, so you can come hang out at my place. I'm fine without electricity. Ella, if you don't want to come to my place, you know Mom and Dad don't mind if you go home. I'm not going home to Mom and Dad's. Look, you know Dad will come get you if you don't come here or even Charlotte's dorm room. I'm just warning you, though. Finn had a few friends from his team over last night, and I'm pretty sure they're still at Mom and Dad's. Groaning, I frown, knowing he's right. The last thing I want to do is hang out with a bunch of my younger brother's friends. I didn't understand high school boys when I was in high school, so at 25, it's not much different. All right, fine, I'll go to your house. Great, text me when you get there. You know where the key is. I should be home around 4. Drive safe. I will. Standing, I began going through my small beach house, making sure it's locked up tight. You would think since I'm responsible enough to have my own home, my family would trust me to make my own decisions about a little storm. But after everything we've been through, it's not the case. The wind whistles, whipping past me as I step out into my large back deck. I wince, realizing it's already blowing harder than I thought. I'm sure it won't be long before the rain starts. I pick up my pace, rushing back inside my raised 2-bedroom cottage. The house shakes from the wind as if prompting me to hurry. I grab a pale blue duffel bag from the bottom of my closet and toss everything I'll need inside, knowing it might be a few days before I'm able to come home. My phone rings, my mom's face lighting up the screen. Grimacing, I ignore the call, already knowing she's just going to tell me she's sending Dad over. My entire family nearly suffocates me with how protective they are of me. I get it, but I can't do it anymore. I'll call them in a little bit. In the meantime, hopefully they won't call the whole town looking for me. You would think after I started making enough money waitressing and saving to get my own place, they would give me my independence. But sometimes I wonder if it will ever happen. My bare feet slap against the wood floors as I stride out to the living room, snatching my keys and phone off the table. I grimace at the sound of the rain pelting the house, alerting me to the growing threat outside. Taking a deep breath, I inhale the scent of rain and salt water as the choppy waves slam into the shore. I jump into my Jeep Wrangler just as the rain picks up, coming down harder. Great. At least I don't have far to go. I love the peacefulness and simplicity here. It's perfect for me. But while we're in hurricane season, my family won't leave me alone. I'm sick of being treated like I'm incapable of doing anything for myself. I'm fine. I just need to convince all of them. Backing out of my driveway, I veer towards Ocean Highway to make my way towards town. I slow and lean closer to the windshield, wondering if I'll make it to Dex before I have to pull over. I can barely see. Coming up to a stop sign, I notice a single headlight up ahead. It takes me a moment to realize it's not the car with a headlight out, but a motorcycle. That can't be fun or safe. The next moment seems to happen in slow motion as I watch helplessly on in horror. The motorcycle turns towards me as a gust of wind bursts through, rattling my car and pushing the man past the point to recover. My eyes widen as the motorcycle slides, falling onto him as he slams against the pavement. The motorcycle screeches and crunches against the concrete, sending shivers down my spine. Preparing to drag the man's body along with it, it finally breaks free and skids to a stop. His body rolls another few feet as his helmet detaches, his body slumping into the now cracked ground. Throwing my car into park, I jump out into the pouring rain, a terrified scream leaving my lips. Running towards the fallen man, I drop down on my knees, his jeans and leather jacket shredded and covered in blood, dirt, and concrete. Oh my God, are y'all okay? Of course you're not okay, but can you hear me? I try to control my anxiety as I yell over the sounds of the storm. Shakily, I slip my hand along his neck. A low growl falls from his lips. My eyes finally focus enough to observe the slight rise and fall of his chest. Thank God you're breathing. I pull out my phone and dial 911. Hearing the dispatcher, I interrupt. I need help. There was an accident, a motorcycle. He's breathing, but he doesn't look good. A chill runs through my body, already completely soaked to the bone, but I ignore it, attempting to focus on the man lying awkwardly. Can you tell me what hurts? I inquire as instructed, but he only again. We're just off Ocean Highway in Genesis Beach. Please hurry. The ambulance is already on the way, but I need you to stay on the line if you can to keep us updated. I almost laugh at the ridiculousness of the request, but concede. I'll leave you on speaker. I set my phone down near my knee, hoping to keep it as dry as possible. Please don't stop working now. I lean over him, attempting to shield him from some of the pouring rain, no matter how impossible, as the wind blows it sideways, hitting me in the face. Reaching towards him, I'm eager to do what I can to comfort him and pray he's going to be okay. I cover his seemingly uninjured hand with my right hand, letting my left fall just above the curve of his strong jaw, his slight stubble scratching my palm. His tongue juts out, licking blood and rain off his cracked lips. Helmet? You're lucky it didn't come off until the last bounce. I can't believe you're alive, let alone conscious right now. He opens his eyes and looks into mine as if he needs me to survive, leaving me off balance and causing my heart to irrationally skip a beat. Unable to tear myself away from his intense gaze, I stare back at him, desperate to help. Beautiful, he murmurs, catching me off guard. My eyes widen and my cheeks heat. There's no way he can see me. He must be delirious. Can I do anything to help you until the ambulance gets here? I need to do something useful. He attempts to shake his head, but moans in pain from the simple movement, his eyes reflexively closing. Can't. Just don't move. The last thing I need is for him to hurt himself more. His eyes barely open as he reaches towards me before groaning in utter agony. The sound hits me harder than the wind and rain. Help me. His plea breaks my heart. I've never felt so helpless. That's saying a lot coming from me. Tears stream down my face as the sirens close in. I only hope they get here in time.
All right. Thank you so much, Nikki. I loved getting both of those main perspectives in one reading. That was really a a great way to give us a great sense of the whole project. So
I've
thank you
actually
for
never done that before, so with all the books I've written, but I felt like in this one it was necessary.
Oh yeah. Oh, great. So this is really a lucky first time thing that we're getting here. All right. So reading next today is Linda Fifer. Linda grew up in Ohio with writers and musicians in her family. She graduated from Kent State University with BS and MA degrees in speech language pathology, then moved west. She has written a musical, songs, poems, and been published locally in Spokane Rights. Now retired, she completed her debut novel, The Road Between Two Skies, an uplifting story of a woman who discovers her strength when faced with demanding challenges. Living in the West with her husband and two dogs, Linda is inspired by the nature surrounding her. Today we'll be hearing from Linda's latest book, Finding the Grain. Izzy Stark, returning home from her service in Afghanistan, faces a heart-wrenching tragedy when her husband Dave is killed by an IED just weeks before his discharge. The shattered dreams they once shared now burden Izzy alone as she navigates her civilian life in Whistle Canyon, Colorado, where Dave had inherited a home. While Dave's memory haunts her, new friends like Ben McCulley rally to help mend her neglected home. Let's welcome Linda.
Hi there. I'm sitting in a rainy Montana today, so I hope you have better weather than I do. I'm going to start at the very beginning. Izzy couldn't help but think of the moment of Dave's return, his throwing off his cap into the corner, dropping his bag, and opening his arms wide for the welcome he'd been waiting for. She played it again and again in her mind, just moments, really, but comforting ones she hung on to. She didn't, oops, what'd I do? I did it, I did it. What happened?
What's happening?
I only had the Zoom on it. Hang on. Oh dear.
Were you reading from a window on your screen?
No, I'm reading from my book and I just totally lost the pictures of everybody.
Oh, well, we can still hear you. So if you keep
Okay,
reading and then we'll figure it
okay,
out.
okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
She didn't notice the chaplain and the major approaching from the front door that February afternoon, but their knocks sounded heavy and severe. She jumped and felt her arms turn into jello as she opened the door. She remembered those first three thoughts. You aren't Dave. You don't look happy to see me. Why do you want to come in? What they said made no sense. Sorry, I can't let you in. I'm busy right now. No, 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 you're wrong, she said. Dave hadn't been killed. He would have told me. I've got to pack all this up before his return. Come back when you've got it right. She didn't need to hear this conversation. Too dreadful to consider. The major held out a letter from Shinand Air Base, Herat Province, where Dave and Izzy had been stationed. The typewritten address was clearly not Dave's chunky handwriting. Sergeant Stark, listen, he began. The same time, the chaplain opened his arms like a blessing Jesus and invited her to sit. Why would he invite her to sit in her own home? She had a freshly dried dish towel in her hands when the chaplain called her, my child. She lunged at him like a lioness protecting her pride. You can't tell me this. You can't. We have plans. He can't. I won't. Why do I need to pray? He can't be dead. We have so much to do. She beat on the chaplain's chest with her fist, still clutching that towel, and dissolved into a puddle at his feet. Denial is a powerful thing. This was the story that she revised in her mind as she packed Dave's clothes and belongings. She would drive effortlessly away from their home base through a maze of miles, stopping only for meals or an occasional view or a roadside marker to break from the road. She gave herself permission to do this. She would envy the miles sticking under the truck away from any memories that haunted her. It would help her forget, at least put things into perspective. Her mission, after all, would be accomplished her way. She was both in charge and the only staff to carry it out. No more surprises or distractions. She would like the succinct travel plan, feel the responsibility, and be true to that mission as she always had in Afghanistan. She was reliable, dependable, strong, and that independent. She expected to take 4 days on the road in her new story, driving in and out of radio station airwaves, catching up on the news in pleasant and basic highway motels, or in diners the locals visited. She would sleep well because she would drive until the road wearied her eyes and grip on the wheel. She would awaken at 3:30 or 4 a.m. feeling refreshed. She would expect long days, miraculous sunsets over wide and new landscapes, and perhaps an occasional shooting star as she drove into some motel parking lot. She imagined shaking her head at such luck to have a star point a path for her at the right place and the right time. And she would feel Dave next to her, as if he were navigating the coordinates. This was part of the story, too, how grateful she was to have so many things go right for her after the incredible loss of her husband and the disruption of their dreams. She would create him again in some way during the drive, not the guy in charge leader, but more her partner. Not the guy who swept her off her feet, but the guy who wanted a civilian life with her. Not the 8-year-old who first set eyes on his uncle's home, Breezy Point, and fell in love with it, but the adult who wanted this to be their home. The last part of her story was slowly advancing the truck up the drive where Breezy Point was awaiting them. She looked forward to that first glance at Uncle Will's place, which was now hers. She imagined a one-story home, white paint, and views that could kill, if she could use that term, because they were so beautiful. She would arrive at the end of this story fully pleased with her careful driving and good luck to be home. Finally, no matter what it cost her. She would be numb to most of the road behind her. And yet, somehow, she would still find Dave there. Once the truck was packed and she backed from the base house driveway, she was beyond feeling. There was no sense of passing time, no sense of belonging to anything other than escaping. Dave's urn, a simple blue enamel one with silver trim, sat close in the passenger seat, her map and snacks tucked behind. The remaining interior was stacked with necessary items for her first night in Colorado. Change of clothes, the coffee maker and the toaster, a set of silverware, 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 bowls. She still thought of meals for 2. Cold cereal, bread, boxes of books and music to distract her, a CD player and a radio, her clock, Dave's books and clothes, suitcases to keep her busy when she got there, her weapons and sleeping bag. The back of the truck was packed with spare furniture like a Tangram puzzle, a junk dealer's packing system that included random anythings that didn't fit into the cab. She drove on the right side of the wind and the warm side of sunset, barely recognizing motorcycles or trucks that might pass. But she did watch for ghosts on the passenger side of other vehicles. The road can be a lonely receptacle for heartbreak, and here she was, in that part of the story she never believed would happen. The utter regret of leaving, the thought of turning back to nothing, the lifelessness of the road, and this trip that guaranteed her nothing as well. Clouds arched the sky, geese, sparrows, and hawks laced the flat horizon, metaphors for the high, wide, and detached. Izzy ached for someone to talk to and began conversations with Dave. For reassurance, she told herself, so that her voice would still be recognizable to herself when she finally said something aloud. While she gasped the truck, she pretended that he was just inside the station getting a latte or checking the truck bed, tying the mattress down like a prisoner along the inside wall. She returned to the driver's seat, sitting again in a seat that was all too familiar by now, and turned her head, waiting for him to climb in over their life packed in the front. Ready, she thought. The response only in her head was his constant, ready as I'll ever be. She didn't realize that her story had turned into a string, unraveling from the fabric she and Dave had woven, leaving a trail of thread along the highways and freeways, a musty hotel room, with shiny chrome and formica diners. She was convinced her story would make sense once she got to Whistle Canyon, Colorado, a few days away, and that everything would fall into place. By then, she'd feel something again. About halfway through nowhere, someplace past Texas, the evening fog settled across her eyes. She saw the road, felt it underneath, white and yellow lines fading in the sunlight and sliding by seconds. They blended silently behind her, the dark envelope she floated across. Izzy! Izzy! Her eyes snapped open in time to pull the truck into her lane, then the kick of gravel sprayed the underside of her truck. Her body jerked upright as she stopped the truck on the shoulder. She'd fallen asleep, just long enough to hear Dave's words awaken her. That's who she heard. She wiped her scratchy eyes, replayed the voice. Izzy! Izzy! Definitely his voice, the voice she wanted to hear once more. Everybody says that. Well, now she knew it was not enough. His voice stepped in when the road got too comfortable. She opened the driver's side to catch the brisk air. A rush of wind conversed through the trees overhead. A pause, then the returning hiss as it picked up again. It felt like a country song, that wind. A deep breath spilled into her lung, matching the tree branch movements. One breath cleared her head, then another to refresh, and the last one to admit she needed to stop for the night. By the third day, she got past the plains, its grasses and crops, its flat, lazy rivers and gray March skies. She discovered a state park devoted to dinosaurs and pulled in to stretch her legs. Dave liked dinosaurs. It was the kind of thing they would have planned to do, and it brought him near again. The edgy wind whipped around her as she walked along the path to various sites. She heard what seemed to be ancient warning cries of a bird or fox in the late winter wind that left an early spring warmth on her face when the seasons collided. She was alone on the trail, all the more eerie and primitive, because she couldn't hear the bones. Only the wind hit the dead grasses. She came to a ravine with an information sign. It pointed out a dinosaur femur that had been exposed some years before, the very existence of a dinosaur so close to her. Her shoulders sagged. A bubble deep in her gut stretched upward into a gasp, then exploded into a primal moan that the wind carried out into the gully below. This was Dave, his remains scattered over a dry horizon, bits of uniform and bone and tissue falling like bloody rain mixed with smoke and fire. She thought of death, seeing that femur. A random ugly piece as a reminder that each sunrise and each sunset would bleach what was left behind. It's just a bone, she rationalized as she turned toward the truck. Her sobbing continued, her walk uneven, not catching enough breath with each step. She leaned over the engine, embraced the hood, and let the tears drop in spots that the earth willingly received. Memory was not fair, how it exploded something away, how what's left behind either gets ignored or gets kicked up. It wasn't fair. She had never told her story to this depth, how she shattered. After all, she was independent, the strong one. She hadn't bookmarked that in her story ever. Her overwhelming shock didn't allow her to stand upright, let alone get back into the truck. She couldn't move, much like the dinosaur femur permanently jutting out of the rock. Imagine crying over a piece of dinosaur. Imagine. Only the gully heard her. Thank you. I'll see if I can try to get back on and join you.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you for that reading. I mean, there was so much emotion just in that brief snippets. You really brought that to life for us.
That's what I'm
Um,
hoping.
mhm. So our final reader for today is Melissa Clark Bacon. Melissa was raised and stayed in Little Rock, Arkansas. By day, she works as a data analyst, and by night, she writes stories and makes photographs using historic and alternative printing processes. Her short story, The Handkerchief, where her character Millie first appears, won Best in Show Adult Fiction Short Story at the Grand Prairie Festival of the Arts. Her current creative work focuses on revealing unnoticed women from the past through captivating stories and photographs that aspire to elevate their contributions and offer them up as role models to women today. Through Her Lens is Melissa's debut novel. Through Her Lens weaves a gripping tale of self-discovery set against the backdrop of World War II. Meet Millicent Trayford, a brilliant young woman working for British intelligence in the perilous hunt for the deadly Nazi V-1 and V-2 bombs. Millie's world is turned upside down when she decides to blow up her own life and pursue her lifelong passion for photography. Melissa, the virtual podium is yours.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm going to say now, I've dropped a second ago and we're having very stormy weather here. So I apologize up front if things go awry. So, right. Chapter 1, Train to London, May 17th, 1943, 385 days until D-Day. Tucked into a compartment next to her friend Callum, a Royal Air Force photographic reconnaissance pilot, Millie craned her neck and watched the landscape fly by as the train raced toward London. After 3.5 years of war, the countryside looked like an old man weary from a lifetime in the mines, covered in soot, stooped with fatigue, but determined to carry on. A frightened young girl traveling alone shared the opposite bench with a young soldier on his way to help Montgomery and the 8th Army in North Africa. The girl wore the telltale tag of an evacuee. Is she going home or finding a new one? Millie strained at the collar of her crisp new Women's Auxiliary Air Force uniform when she noticed how its freshly dyed blue wool stood out among the tired grays and browns worn by the other passengers. It was a gift, or better put, a bribe from her father. She didn't have any proof, but she guessed that he had a hand in her reassignment to the heart of Britain's photographic reconnaissance efforts. Her transfer had been abrupt, and the uniform arrived on its heels, adding weight to her suspicion. Through the lens of her camera, Millie constructed a balanced image. It reassured her that there was at least one place where she was in control. The contrasting fabrics were lovely. They created a texture so rich, Millie wanted to reach out and touch them. But that wasn't the picture Millie craved. Her right pointer finger itched to take a shot of the diminutive girl dangling her feet across from her. She hesitated. Taking a picture of a moment like this was a bit like stealing, and in a small train compartment, she would surely get caught. But a photo of this reserved, frightened traveler would make the perfect companion to the one of the girl at Charing Cross Road. She had taken it at a bookstore the day before she gave in to her father's wishes by agreeing to become a photographic interpreter almost 3 years ago. Another interesting bit of symmetry. To hell with it. She lifted the camera and fired off a reckless shot. When the mirror slapped back into place, the girl looked up in alarm. Millie simply flexed her eyebrows and the corners of her mouth flexed up. What was done was done. You're going to want this, Callum whispered into her ear, poking her side with the leather portfolio he had given her for Christmas, rescuing her from the girl's accusing eyes. Millie advanced the film before camera said, I added the image of the little girl in front of the blown-out bookstore. She reminds me of you. Millie's head snapped in his direction. She looked up into his blue eyes, amazed. Is he reading my mind now? Where did you get this? She snatched the portfolio, and the photo for that matter. And why did you accept a transfer to RAF Benson just when I was heading south? Did you want to be near me? Elliot isn't going to be too pleased to see you. She had purposefully left the portfolio in her room at Taylock, her grandmother Fiona's house, where she billeted while stationed at RAF Wick. If Elliot saw it, he would ask where she got it, and she didn't want to lie to him. Leaving it behind along with Callum, or so she thought, was an attempt to keep the peace with her fiancé. Aggie found them when she was tidying up your room. She thought you might want them, he said, lifting a judgmental eyebrow in a gesture so small that only she would notice. Lifting both of hers and opening her eyes wide to put him back in the box he belonged in, she replied simply and properly, thank you. Sliding the photograph out of its container, Millie traced its every detail. The bundled up girl, the missing storefront, the gold leaf decoration on the book the girl read, and the still stocked bookshelf behind her. She had canceled her dinner plans with her childhood governess, Nana Clara, to go and see the destruction herself, to record it. She was hoping to capture signs of resilience. She had succeeded. Millie fought against the satisfied smile threatening to pull across her face. She didn't want Callum to think he had been right to bring her treasures along. When she emerged from the tube station at Covent Garden that day 3 years ago, her sinuses burned from all of the smoke and dust, but her every nerve fired with an excitement. She took a deep breath and pushed it out hard in a feeble attempt to stop her heart beating like timpani. Standing in the middle of the detritus of the nightly bombing raids disturbed and thrilled Millie. It was like staring over the cliff's edge before she jumped into the clear waters below when she was a child. She relished the anticipation even then. A cat on the prowl, she continued onward, certain of her prey. Men weren't the only ones answering Churchill's call to do one's duty, but they were the only ones on the pages of the papers. She would make the world see the way women did their part. She kept breathing deeply, trying to quiet the sound of her heart beating in her ears as she pressed onward, kicking rubble aside. The street signs were gone. The gas lights were unlit. All identifying marks had been wiped away to hide targets from both bombardiers and spies. But this was Millie's home. She had her memories to guide her. Her eyes darted across the landscape, searching for a public bomb shelter sign, heeding her father's advice to always know where to go when the bombs start dropping, and kept moving. Ragged concrete boulders lined the streets, but she pointed her lens at the people, marching onward without a smile or a tip of the hat for their neighbors. She couldn't find a single eye to focus on. If you take pictures of people, focus on the eyes. A rule her boss at the Ministry of Information drummed into her head. She focused instead on a group of women, baskets in hand, standing in a queue at the butcher. Gray, limp clothes hung from their bodies, washed one too many times, and their faces carried the deep lines of exhaustion. One of the women glanced her way, and Millie depressed the shutter. She waited half a second. The rush didn't come. It never did for low-hanging fruit. As she searched, Millie enclosed her 35mm camera into its worn leather case dangling from her camera strap to protect the glass lens from the dangers that come from digging deeper. She turned the corner to find an entire block annihilated. According to the radio reports that morning at breakfast, German bombs hit Charing Cross Road last night, littering London streets with the words of Austen, Bronte, and Shelley as they leveled more than 20 bookstores. When Millie heard the news, she pulled the sleeves of her wool jumper down, hiding the goosebumps rising on her arms from Nana Clara. She had precious few memories of her mother, but she had photographs. The one of the two of them standing outside of Foyle's bookstore invaded her thoughts, spurring her toward her current quest. Today, the neighborhood looked like a giant had kicked over a child's wooden block castle. She tucked her camera into her coat and shuffled through a narrow lane left in the ever-growing tower of debris. Inside the newly built fortress, Millie heard someone shout, "Be careful, miss. Haven't gotten all of the bodies yet." Bodies. She stopped short and shook her head yes and no, releasing the threatening tension in her neck. Less than 10 feet in front of her, she found an elderly gentleman. You might have thought he was asleep if not for the bricks mounted on his chest and the pillow of blood under his head. Had he been shopping, or did he live in one of the residence stories above the stores? Next to him was a younger woman, legs twisted backward, with blood smeared across her cheeks, underlining her open eyes. A single daughter, perhaps, fulfilling her duties as a caregiver quietly and without hesitation. Warm fluid filled the back of Millie's throat. She'd never been this close to death before, but she swallowed hard and snapped 2 photographs, capturing what was vital before it was gone. But still, the feeling of completeness didn't come. Then, without a thought, she squatted low to brush the girl's eyelids shut, offering up a silent prayer for the nameless girl's sacrifice, and walked away as she might in a cemetery. Just as she made it behind a partially destroyed wall, Millie vomited. Peter, her brother, preached that she would eventually grow accustomed to the sight of all of the destruction, but Millie didn't want that. She wanted to feel and see everything so she could capture it with her camera before it was lost forever. Besides, Clara regaled her with tales of her mother, Margaret, and the battles she fought as a suffragette throughout Millie's childhood. Every story dripped with the deep feelings that drove the women. They made the women strong, not weak, as men mistakenly assumed. The smell of iron and the sour contents of her stomach rising in her nostrils made Millie gag, so she crawled to the top of a mound of bricks and ragged concrete, desperate for a bit of fresh air and the story she was looking for. From her perch, she studied the home guard as they dug into the remains at the antiquarian bookshops, searching for people dead and alive. The odor of her own nervousness dampening her underarms mingled with death. There is nothing new to tell here. She went looking for more, better, perhaps just something different. 5 steps in front of her lay another pair of bodies, once mother and daughter, now casualties of war. She waited a moment and let the sorrow seep in deep. When it threatened to cast a shadow on her search, she wrapped it up tight in her heart and used it as fuel to continue on, for the women's sake. Standing next to them, she looked through the viewfinder but didn't depress the shutter. Death was only part of this story. She wound through the mounds of broken red bricks, shattered glass, splintered wooden beams, and confetti stripped from books, confident in her search. When her feet found solid ground, she got to work capturing details. If she kept shooting, the feeling would come. A blood-stained wool cap. Whose head had it kept warm? A leather briefcase ripped at the seams. Did it spend its days in the British courts? A crushed golden locket. Reaching for hers, she wonders whose faces did the charm hold. With every shot and step, the anticipation bubbled. A deflated red ball, a frayed wicker shopping basket. She crept closer, going deeper into the destruction until something moving to her right caught her eye. Her skin tingled when the wind blew gently on her back in her ear. It was what she had been looking for. A girl with a brown leather-bound book propped on her knees sat reading as if it were an ordinary day. Never mind, she was seated in front of what remained of Mr. Nelson's bookstore. She wore a double-breasted plaid wool coat, a stocking cap with red stripes, and knee-high wool socks that puddled at her ankles. 2 braids full of dust licked her shoulders. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. The scene in front of her had it all. Luring lines, the page of open books cast in every direction for the eye to rest on, a dark corridor to tempt the viewer in deeper, and a girl ignoring it all. Her heart began to race again. She pushed the emotion down, holding it tightly, willing it to stay. She hadn't got the shot yet. The magical feeling was hers until then. F-stop and shutter speed set. Millie blocked out the chatter coming from the home guard. She pushed away all of the chaos and slowed her breathing. She desperately needed it to be just the girl, her camera, and her now. She looked through the lens and just made out the title of the book, Treasure Island, scrawled across the cover in gold letters. She felt the fluttering of a hummingbird wings in her chest, a fellow adventurer. Realizing this made the capture all the more intoxicating. Continuing forward, she forced herself to move slowly, making as little noise as possible. Something about seeing and not being seen like a spy added to the thrill. She took her shot. Damn, I have to get closer. Sneaking forward, Millie closed the gap between herself and the girl. When she was about 4 feet away from the girl, she leaned back onto a mound and planted her feet to steady herself, focusing the camera's lens on the girl's finger, drawing an imaginary line under each sentence as she explored Stevenson's world. She took another shot and another. She was grasping at straws, but she didn't dare go any closer. She would surely be caught. The girl's lips moved as she read aloud. Millie smiled when she realized the girl was doing the voices. Millie took one more shot, one that captured the entire scene. The bookshop robbed of its front window, front door, and front wall for that matter. A girl sitting on a curled up bit of rubber tread with a shelf of books spilled at her feet. Behind her, a reading desk with a lamp holding a fallen rafter. To her left, the side wall covered in shelved books, still largely intact. Next, Millie returned her attention to the girl and her chalky face. As Millie depressed the shutter button, the girl turned ever so slightly. Bugger, she missed the eye. She pressed on, aiming again, but the angle was still wrong. Determined, she risked standing and began pointing her lens this way and that, looking, shooting, hoping. Finally, Millie checked the film counter. She noted that she only had 2 shots left on this roll of film. It was now or never. Lying on her belly, she felt her heart pushing blood through her body. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly as she prepared to open the shutter. As she did, a wash of dusk light dipped below the barrage balloons. It flooded into the broken place, magically revealing a swirling fog of fairy dust around the girl. She heard the camera's mirror lift and slap back into place. Without thinking about it, she had taken the shot. Her head shot up to see if her subject was onto her. Still reading. Good. She took one more picture, this time on purpose. Then her entire body relaxed. She rolled back over onto her back. It was the perfect shot. She wished she could bottle the feeling. Satisfaction seemed too small a word to describe it. It was everything, all she craved. When she felt the tingle ooze out of the tips of her fingers and toes, she curled them tightly. Just one more moment. When she felt the last of it wiggle free, she stood up, dusted off her pants, and reloaded her camera. The hunt on again. As their train pulled into King's Cross Station, a self-satisfied Millie tucked the image away into her portfolio for safekeeping. She'd left it behind because she didn't need it with her to remember. She had memorized it. Better yet, she was likely to see it the moment she got off the train. The Ministry of Information had used the image in advertisements and posters with the headline, Books Over Bombs. It hadn't stopped the Germans' barrage, but showing the world the girl's spirit was something, a start. As Millie settled into the last train compartment of her journey to her new cage, otherwise known as RAF Mendham, the magnificent manor house requisitioned by the British government in support of their aerial spying operation, she wondered if she would have been happier if she had stayed on at the MOI all those years ago. But after what she found the morning after taking that shot of the girl at the bookstore, there really had never been any question of what they would expect her to do next.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. You painted such a beautiful picture of the world and really immersed us in that, as well as the character, which is
Oh,
hard to do in just 15 minutes. So thank you so much.
thank you, Kayla.
Mhm. At this time, we do have some time for our audience Q&A. So for anyone who has a question, please go ahead and type that in the chat and I'll make sure it gets asked. We do already have a few questions coming in. So I'll get started right off the bat. This first question is for all three authors. Each of your books spotlight really strong women navigating these unique challenges. As you were writing, did you learn anything from your main characters? Maybe we could go in reading order. So, Nikki, do you want to start us off with this one?
Okay. Well, I think you really got to, with the characters that I developed, you really got to use the support of who you have around you to help build you up instead of, I think is the main thing, instead of tear you down, because sometimes they unintentionally do that. And trying to be supportive and loving. And I think that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of experience that all the time. So definitely feeling that one. Linda, how about you? You might have to go to the bottom left of your screen to hit the unmute.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to write about strong women who go through demanding situations and who have some kind of evolvement or rediscovery of themselves. When I do that, I have a rediscovery of myself as well. So for Izzy, who is the main female character in this, I wanted to create someone who was going through multiple levels of grieving and how she could eventually forgive herself and redefine herself as she pulled away from the the influence of Dave, her husband. To me, that was important that she remained independent, something I like to be, but at the same time, still feeling vulnerable, that she has encountered new things, new setting, new friends, and still is uncomfortable or kind of self-conscious about how she's living that life that she's discovering at the moment.
Yeah, I love to hear that. You're having a little bit of a rebirth with every new character. I think that's so true, and maybe people don't really understand how much that happens for writers. Melissa, jumping to you, anything you learned from Millie?
As she, you know, as the other authors will probably tell you, they begin to consume your mind and become as much a part of your family as, anyone else. And her main struggle is, the difference between what you should do and what you want to do, which unfortunately are not often the same things. And so getting to experience how it clipped her wings to do the shoulds and how much bravery it takes to do the wants. It was an interesting experience, and getting to go on that emotional ride with her taught me a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, characters really do come to life. They really do become family members or friends. So, totally understand that. This is another question for Melissa specifically. How did you do research to effectively describe the setting of your book since it's in a different era?
Well, I'm also a photographer. I actually come to storytelling through photography, and I'm obsessed with photojournalism. So Lee Miller was a credentialed photographer during the war. Um, there were many other photographers, some of them women. And so I studied a lot of the photographs. The description of the image that I describe in this scene is an actual image. It's my screensaver. And I spent a long time researching the book. I spent 2 months in London, in those neighborhoods, and then at Uxbridge at the British Archives. So I was able to not only see all of the stuff that had been declassified from the actual Operation Crossbow, but just all of the imagery. Black and white photography had really come into its own by the 40s, and so there was a very physical, tangible record of the era. And reading books that were written at that time, so like contemporary popular writers at the time, the kind of language they used and the way they described settings. So.
Oh, yeah. So lots of sort of multifaceted approach to research. Really makes sense how it becomes so three-dimensional. This is a question for all three authors, once again, from Dina. Are any of the characters based on real people? How about Linda? Do you want to start us off with this one?
Sure, because it takes place with military undertones. I relied on my husband's military career, stories from my dad, and stories from other veterans as well. It didn't necessarily apply to women, but I made sure it did.
Yeah, definitely. I love to hear that kind of thing. So thank you. Jumping to Nikki, how about you? Any characters that were based on people that you actually know?
I tend to I'll use pieces of people, but I never will base a single character on someone I know. I Again, kind of like Linda was saying, you may use pieces of things that you um, know, whether it be family, friends, or just someone you observe, acquaintances, but for me, it's never a whole person ever.
Yeah, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle of all these people
Absolutely.
you've met in your
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah.
Like you're creating your own person. So
Yeah,
it's a way to do that.
definitely. How about you, Melissa?
So Millie is a compilation of a lot of actual women. That's how I came to choose Operation Crossbow, because at minimum, women actually outranked men, which is very unusual. The man who invented the stereoscopic way of taking reconnaissance photographs thought women would be better for analyzing them, so he recruited women early on. So Constant Babington Smith actually found the V1, and she has a memoir. So and there's a wonderful nonfiction book called Women of Intelligence that talks about a lot of these women, and all the way from Churchill's daughter. Winston Churchill's daughter was a photographic interpreter, and women who lied about their age to get in, who came from very humble means. So there was quite a variety. So that's how some of those character involves. But to be honest, having read it in the backside, apparently many of my secondary characters resemble people in my life, because friends will read the book and they'll say, Callum is blah blah and Elliot is so and so. So I guess I did more of that than I knew. So I learned that from my cold readers and my first readers. They would say, like Callum apparently is like my husband in many ways. And he was like, I really love Callum. And my girlfriends were like, of course you do. So anyway, so yeah,
The
I
psyche
encourage
is
you though, for the women who actually did the work, there's a ton of research out there and they were fantastic. So yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Love to hear it. Lots of that historical influence again. We've got a question for Linda. You seem to have a lot of knowledge of woodworking. Do you have experience with that, or did you have to do a lot of research?
My dad did a lot of woodworking. And so I watched, that was one of the things that I used in there, was a time that he refinished our floors, and the care and kind of the zone he got into to do that. He made furniture as well, small pieces of furniture. So I did rely on that. It was kind of nice to bring my dad back. He died in 1979. So he's part of this book too because of that.
Oops, I just stopped my video by accident, but yeah, I mean, it goes back to that whole, character thing, right? And it's not like you're just taking pieces from people for characters, but also these experiences, and
Mhm.
that's such a great connection.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
We've got another question for all three authors from Dina. What was the most challenging scene or chapter to write, and why was it the most challenging for you? Maybe we could go back to Nikki for this question to start, anyway.
Um, I definitely know what mine is, but it's also something I'm not willing to share.
Spoilers and such.
Um, so unfortunately, it's revealing too much of the story. It's way too far in.
It's a
But
reason for everyone to pick up the book, that's for sure.
absolutely, there's things that just hit you that just are they're hard emotionally. When I'm my I when I'm writing, you know, my family will come in and ask, why are you laughing? Why are you, oh, what's wrong? Is something, are you okay? Like, oh, yeah, it's, you know, it's whatever you're working on. So it's like things hit you, and I'll just say that. It's just, I really dive into my character's shoes. I want to be in their shoes. I want to know how they feel. I want to know how they react. I want to know who, in every situation. And that's kind of how I started the whole story in the first place. You know, what happens when there's this guy who's been running from his past for over 10 years and he can no longer run. What happens then? And that's kind of where I started the whole story. So it's, I definitely know what it is. I just can't give more than that.
Well, thank you for giving us that much anyway. How about you, Melissa? What was the most challenging scene or chapter to write?
So I'm also going to be vague because it obviously happens in the back half, but it's wartime, so it's inevitable that there's personal loss. And so, I write a lot of scenes that she's embroiled in. This one, it was after math, but she's also in the middle of, the bombs are falling all the time, right? No one was really safe. So, the build up to all of that, when you're getting to those climactic moments in the middle of the third act, it just, those are the ones that are a lot harder and take more of a toll. So yeah, it's, but it came from that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're so embroiled in the story and the characters, it feels very real. And Linda, how about you? The most challenging scene to write?
All of it? No, I won't say that. There is, and when I introduced a character named Ben, who is a woodworker and helps Izzy out with some projects around her home. And obviously they're going to get closer. I had a difficult time trying to place when that would happen in the book. I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want it to be just dumped on at the end. So for me, I had to pace myself and do it very, very gradually so that I would just give hints along the way.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of this balancing act, right? Um, we have time for just a few more questions, so I'm just gonna um go through one more for each of you. First for Linda, back to you. This is a question from Becca. Did any of your characters change your plans for them as you were writing?
Well, another character that I haven't mentioned yet is Tom, who is a friend of both Izzy's and her late husband Dave's. He has developed a nonprofit called Boots and Hammers that provides remodeling uh, for various all over the country for veterans. And he comes across Izzy's need and originally I had it planned that he was going to try to become more romantically involved. But as I was writing it, it became really trite. I didn't like it. It didn't flow well. And so I changed him into someone who was involved with Dave just a few hours before his death. And for that, he feels extremely guilty. There are so many layers of his guilt that Izzy finally realizes that Tom's going through the same thing I am. And kind of elaborated on both of their characters.
Yeah. I love to hear that you kind of had to change, like switch gears because it's really relieving to know I'm not the only one who gets kind of pushed around by my characters sometimes. So, thank you for that. Question for Melissa. What made you choose your book cover and how long did it take you to create that cover? And then were you happy with the final result?
Well, I worked with the artist team from Atmosphere, and as I said before, I had used a lot of images to learn about the era, and so I sent that to the graphic artist team, and I knew it needed to be bordering on black and white, if not black and white entirely. So and it wasn't the original title of the book either. It was anyway, it was Through the Lens was the working title. So that ended up having its own problem, so we changed the name. But and so this was among the cover. I mean, they just did a great job of constructing. I have no idea where they go get the art. I didn't do that work, but they originally had her carrying a pocketbook, and I had to write back immediately. She would not carry a pocketbook. So I need her to have a camera somehow, and I guess through the miracle, I know because I'm a photographer as well, the miracles of Photoshop, they were able to add the camera. And so I was perfectly happy. I love the way it wraps around. You can't necessarily see it here, but I can see the layers on my Photoshop, and there's even photo imagery on the back, even though words are covering it up. So they just did a beautiful job. I had suggestions for the font. I knew I wanted, certain things, and everyone was super accommodating, and we just worked on it until we got it right. And I couldn't be happier. And the team was just fantastic. So yeah, I love it. So, and I love the way it feels. And anyway, it's great. I did consider doing a hardback, but then just for the price point and all the things that come with it, it just felt better to do this. I prefer a paperback anyway, so that's where we landed. So.
All right. I'm so happy to hear that you liked it. I'm definitely also a paperback person. So we'll close with just this last question for Nikki. When will we be getting book 2?
That's a tough question. So I do my books as standalones, but you do have, I take another character, one of the supporting characters, and I use them for their own story. So Declan, who you actually met in the chapter, his book is book 2. And I am working on it. It is in progress. I'm hoping late this year, but it might not make it out till next year's. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I do have another book coming out in July though, prior to that. So that's one of the reasons this got pushed back a little bit. So, but yeah, I'm hoping for late this year. Fingers crossed.
Something to look forward to for sure. Okay, so at this point, I just want to say that as always, it's so wonderful to be able to hear these books in the voices of their creators. So thank you again to Nikki, Linda, and Melissa for being with us here today, sharing your thoughts, your words, your answers to these questions. And of course, thank you to everyone in the audience for being here with us and celebrating these wonderful authors together. Don't forget that you can order Breaking Cycles, Finding the Grain, and Through Her Lens from the links in the chat. And of course, please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, sign up for our email newsletter, or submit a book manuscript of your own. You can submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. So we'll look forward to hearing from you. But other than that, that's it for today. So have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hayla, and thanks everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.